book that Aaron has been guiding me, not just so for my own knowledge, but to share it with people. And so I began journaling my grief. And when Aaron started speaking to me, my messages from him began taking over my journal. And it just was evident at a point that I couldn't just keep this all to myself, although it was therapeutic for me and cathartic during my grief. These were incredible messages that, I was so enlightened by. I just felt like, well, maybe they might help someone else.
Yes.
So I published my first book, which is called Aaron's Energy, An Unexpected Journey Through Grief and the Afterlife with My Brilliant Son. And it is a book, a journal full of his messages, and each one of his messages built on each other. So he's kind of been guiding me along, because this is something I hadn't experienced before, hadn't studied any of this before. So he's been explaining to me. At one point, he explained to me about his actual transition. He waited until I was emotionally ready to hear that, because that took me a long time to even think about what my son might have gone through in his passing. And he told me he woke up in a dark room. There was darkness all around him, and suddenly a light appeared, and it looked a lot like the sparklers that we used to play with on Independence Day, and we'd spin them around in circles. It looked just like that spinning light. He shows me images too, by the way. So that was an image he showed me. And then he said that was the only thing there. So he went toward it and was absorbed into it. And he recognized people that he knew in life who were there in that light, welcoming him in.
Wow. Okay. And then what?
Well, then he had been not long before that talking about black holes and event horizons. And I was, oh, thanks, Aaron. I'm loving this physics lesson I'm getting. What is this? Why are you telling me this? Why are you telling me about black holes and event horizons? Well, he eventually allows me to connect the dots. So after explaining to me about a black hole, dark matter and dark energy, and what all that is, and how 95% of the universe is comprised of things we can't see, but they're there, and showing me what an event horizon looks like, that's what the ring of light looked like when he spoke to me about his transition. And I just was, oh, wow, Aaron, not only are you guiding me, you're doing this in such an organized way to make sure I understand.
So did he meet people he knew, people he loved?
Yes, he did. My mother had transitioned only 4 months before him. And Aaron was a beautiful, caring and loving grandson. And he just loved and doted on his grandparents. And sadly, my mother passed suddenly as well. And she was there. He said, Mimi, that's what my kids called my grandmother or my mother. Mimi was there.
So he didn't suffer.
No, I asked him that. That's a really hard question for a parent to ask their child, or to even think of that they might have suffered. And he said to me, Mom, when you get a paper cut? Yeah. He said, it was like that. It was like less than a split second of pain, followed by, he said, the most incredible feeling of bliss and peace and comfort and love. Wonderful. And you forget about that little momentary blip on the radar of pain.
They say that about the easiest way to pass is is in a fatal auto crash or that sort of accident for that reason, because it's over so quickly.
Yeah, it's interesting because, in life, we're so terrified of the pain of passing. I'm not sure how you feel about this, but I realized after it's not really the passing so much I'm afraid of, it's the pain on passing. And meanwhile, I've heard so much since from near-death experiencers that they actually left their bodies before the impact. They didn't even feel the pain.
Yeah. Mikey Morgan in his book talks about seeing the crash from above. And they often talk about that. Fortunately, that wasn't a bad way for him to have transitioned.
That's what I learned from him. And, who better to tell me about it than himself, right?
Yeah, of course. Of course. So what else has he told you? Let's get the inside story from someone who knows.
Okay. Well, he has talked quite a bit about energy. And that's the reason my first book is titled Aaron's Energy. So he started telling me about energy and how energy connects with energy it's compatible with. So it's drawn to compatible energy. I asked him, well, what about negative and positive? He said, it's not how it is. And it's way more, he said, than we're ever able to detect or study or research. But suffice it to say that negative energy is an important part of the universe, just as important as positive energy is. As we know, that the atoms form on that basis, the electrons and the protons and the neutrons and so forth. So, and he shows me kind of pictorially as well as he can about energy, being drawn to compatible energy. And he talks a lot about sustainable forces. So he mentions that in certain situations, when incompatible energy gets close together, it's not sustainable for very long. It kind of dissipates and goes off into the universe for better use. He told me that the energy is the source of all creation, and that love is the energy of creation. He said that everything else is a derivative of love, which sometimes is hard to understand. But what he talks about is that we're created to be where we are. And we're kind of holding the universe together. The universe is flexible, he says, and, we can't understand how time operates beyond the 3 dimensions we live in, and the universal energy can fine tune and make instant adjustments forward and backward in time, believe it or not, which is mind-boggling for me. But he says that energy constantly flows through the universe, and it's constantly flowing through us. Even when we're in the physical 3-dimensional state, it's still flowing through us all the time. We're constantly in connection with the loving energy of the universe. And he said that everything that we need for survival, we're equipped with. And sometimes things like fear and things like anger and things like grief, well, they're all derivatives of love, he says, and they're all necessary for us to be able to remain where we are for the time we're there, and when we're in our human form. And one quote that he made that ended up in my second book actually my third, because I published 2 editions of Aaron's Energy, but the anthology that you mentioned at the beginning, I I have quotes that kind of, tie all the chapters together, everyone's stories. And I chose the quote from Aaron for my chapter. He said to me, what if it was that one act of kindness of yours in that moment that held the universe together? He said that to me.
He's a philosopher. He truly is.
And yes, he definitely, and thank you for saying that. He really was an incredible philosopher with such a brilliant mind in life. And he's showing me that that's eternal. He always will be.
Well, you sound as if you are, in helping others, you're really helping yourself to move forward with your life, and you're growing and you're making your own life so much better, which is, I think, a beautiful thing. I mean, that's what all of us really are meant to do, even with the hardest things that happen to us. I mean, I have met people and tried to help people who never have been able to get over the first moment that they learned that their son or daughter had transitioned. They just never were able to deal with it, which to me is very tragic. That's not what's meant to happen when we have these things happen in our lives. But they couldn't deal with it. And you have not only dealt with it, but you have, I'm sure, made Aaron so proud of you, because look what you've done with your life.
Well, thank you. That's so kind of you to say. And I do understand how hard it is. In the very beginning, I almost had no desire to carry on. And, it's Aaron. I think he knew if I don't help my mother, she's going nowhere. Yeah. And I literally have followed him, and everything that I've written and everything that I've done has been on his guidance and in his honor. And I do feel that we're working together across the veil. I know it now.
Of course.
Because he told me everything that happens in every dimension affects every other dimension.
Right.
And he said, even though we can't see where they are, they're there. And what happens here affects what happens there, and vice versa. And so the more we do to help ourselves here, we're actually helping our loved ones across the veil.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's what made plain to me, actually, by my spirit guide, that if I do things, I help him grow spiritually. No pressure or anything, but and I'm sure he hasn't quite said no pressure or anything, Mom, but the better you do, the better it's going to work for me. But yeah, it's all one seamless whole, and we're helping one another to grow. That's absolutely right. But
yeah, and he has said that to me, no pressure, Mom. Because sometimes you do, right? Sometimes you feel that pressure, like, oh my goodness, what have I taken on here? Right. And he tells me, take a break from it, Mom. Take a break.
Oh my, that is so funny. But that's true. But Carol, next week we're going to have Carol and Mike on again. They're such a great team. But in the beginning, I mean, she had just 2 children, and her oldest was Mikey, and Mikey actually came into that life deliberately to die at the age of 20 so that he could communicate through her while she had plenty of time to still do his communications. I mean, talk about a design, for heaven's sake. And she said, I didn't sign up for this. He said, oh, yes, you did. And yeah. She said, I never would have. He said, oh, yeah, you did. So, but they're a great team, but still, this is all so temporary here. We just don't understand that it's temporary. And it's beautiful, actually, when we all get together and we all raise a glass of nectar in some, bar. I whenever I think of these bars, I think of the one from Star Wars, but it won't have all the weird looking people in it. It'll all just be us, and we'll all raise a glass of nectar, and we'll all talk